So there's been some leaks and rumors surrounding AMD's upcoming GPU, the RX 9070 XT, pertaining to pricing and performance, and it alludes to an ambitious approach on the market. We've also got more reports of the RTX 50 series cards having their connectors melt, and the RTX 5070 Ti now officially has a release date from Nvidia. All that and more to be discussed in this video.
Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video.
Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. Now that we're about halfway through February, we're starting to hear more and more rumors and information come out pertaining to AMD's RX 9070 series GPUs. If you recall, these GPUs were supposed to be launched back in early January at CES, but AMD decided to delay them for mostly unknown reasons. They have cited that they just wanted to wait and see what the competition does, and then once they know pricing and how the cards perform, then RDNA 4 is going to be coming out. Now, RDNA 4 won't be competing with the high-end from Nvidia, but AMD have shown on their own slides that they'll be targeting the upper mid-range segment, so like the RTX 5070 Ti and their own RX 7900 XT. A lot of retailers have actually received these GPUs, and there have been multiple postings online of these cards sitting in back shelf warehouses, and even reviewers have the cards on hand, but nobody was able to really do anything with them until they're officially released and, also get drivers. And even until this date, we still don't have an actual official release or communication from AMD as to the exact launch date, but during a Q4 2024 earnings call, AMD CEO Lisa Su stated that RDNA 4 will be on sale in early March. And just recently, as I was making this video, David McAfee posted on Twitter that AMD will be hosting a live stream on February 28th, which is going to be dedicated towards the 9070 series. Furthermore, according to Unico's Hardware, they're a Chinese hardware site who mentioned that the cards will be available on March 6th. Therefore, we're looking at about 3 weeks until they're available, so that's actually not too bad. Now, for those of you who are wondering about those rumors surrounding a 32GB version of the 9070 XT, well, Frank Azer replied to a tweet regarding the rumor and said that no, that's not coming. However, that's not to say that there won't be a Radeon Pro version of the GPU with 32GB, but obviously that's going to cost a lot more money. Speaking of specs though, the HKEPC Twitter account posted a screenshot of GPU-Z, which is a GPU utility software, and claimed that they had a system running an RX 9070 XT, and it disclosed some of the specifications. Most of the specs here are already what we knew from previous leaks, but this kind of gives us some further confirmation that we're looking at 4096 shaders, 16GB of memory, G6 memory that is, on a 256-bit bus, and a PCI Express 5.0 interface. But they did also follow up and post a screenshot from the new Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark, but honestly, I wouldn't really pay any heed to this result since it's using a 285K, and they confirmed that it was already tested with FSR frame generation. So wait for third-party benchmarks is my advice. Honestly, it comes down to pricing, if they're going to have an impressive feature stack, and of course availability. I don't think AMD, or more specifically the Radeon group, has ever found themselves to be in such a steep uphill battle when it comes to the GPU market share. If they're going to want people to buy this GPU, it's going to have to compete well against the Nvidia counterpart consistently and also be priced aggressively. I'm doubtful now that AMD is actually going to be doing that. Since we're on the topic of pricing, there was some leaked pricing information from Canada Computers, no less, where they had listed various partner models with pricing. When this was first posted, a lot of people jumped on the post and, they said that these are just placeholder prices. I think a lot of them overlooked the fact that this is in CAD, not USD. But what I can tell you is that I'm like 90% sure that these are actually legitimate. When you look at the 9070 XT models, they range from around $1,100 to, $1,240, and typically AMD cards in Canada do get a considerable markup after conversion. Plus, there are AIB models, so there's the upsell there, and doing some conversion, that's about 775 to 875 USD. So, my prediction is that the 9070 XT is going to launch at $699. Last month I said $599, but, now I'm actually starting to lean towards a higher price, which would just be, a $50 undercut of the 5070 Ti. Which, at first I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's too little of a price difference and people are just going to buy Nvidia cards. But we'll have to wait and see, and see if you'll be able to buy a 5070 Ti at MSRP, which they don't have a Founders Edition model, so keep that in mind. And I think that's what also AMD is going to be banking on, if you can't buy the 50 series cards near MSRP. The other thing is also tariffs, so AMD could just be launching at a higher price than everyone was initially anticipating so that they don't have to raise their prices afterwards and then, receive backlash for it. I know AMD's Jack Hewen said that, they're going to go after some aggressive pricing segments, but to be fair, that was also stated before the conversation of tariffs even happened. This leaves us with a situation where it's going to be, business as usual. AMD is just going to be slightly undercutting Nvidia, or the 9070 XT is going to be, much faster than the 5070 Ti, and they'll have some impressive features to go along with it. But honestly, I'm leaning towards the former. I think if you're expecting a $500 9070 XT at this stage, you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment. I could be wrong though, and I'd love to be wrong, but just considering everything that we've seen, this is the safest bet. Staying within the same price segment, let's talk about the RTX 5070 Ti. Recently, Nvidia tweeted out that this GPU will be hitting store shelves on February 20th, so that's a little less than a week away. I think this card is going to get a lot of traction because it's, priced considerably cheaper than the RTX 5080, and, from what I'm hearing, availability should be better, which is good, but also keep in mind that since this is a card that's targeting a segment where there is a larger chunk of the PC gaming user base, and there's just going to be a lot more demand for it. Also, for the 5070 Ti, there's going to be no Founders Edition, like I said earlier, so the likelihood of you actually being able to buy it at the $750 MSRP is going to be very low, as there will probably be some select few partner models selling at that price, but, I'm expecting most will be in that $799 to $950 range, depending on the model, which goes back to what I was saying, AMD is trying to capitalize on that probably. As for performance, I'm not really expecting, anything amazing when it comes to the RTX 5070 Ti, especially when you take into, the reviews of the RTX 5080 and the 5090. I think out of the box, it's going to be about 6 to 12% faster than the 4070 Ti Super. But what I am interested in, though, is seeing how this card will handle overclocking, because from the results I've seen of the RTX 5080, it can scale pretty well with, higher overclocks and memory as well. Moving on, and I wanted to talk about the whole Nvidia Cablegate situation, where now more RTX 5090 owners have been reporting discoveries of melted cables, adapters, they're finding melted plugs on the PSU side. It's a pretty wild, but also a pretty serious situation. Now, when I had scheduled my video to be posted, or my previous video, Bauer had put out a video, which is why I didn't talk about it in my last video, but he managed to get a hold of the GPU from the user whose post I was talking about in that last video, and he apparently lives pretty close to him. So DeBauer did some interesting testing and found out that, despite being fully seated, the cable was running very hot, and across the wires or different pins, the temperatures were very inconsistent, and because some of them were carrying a lot more current, which is not normal. I definitely recommend watching the whole thing and get yourself more informed on the details. We did also recently have a report from another user, but this time it was an RTX 5080. And that's interesting because the RTX 5080's rated power draw is nowhere close to the 5090. They stated how just during normal use, they saw a red light on the power connector, and that's normal with the Asus models. And, that indicates that a pin wasn't seated properly. But they also double checked and saw that it was seated properly. And they did some troubleshooting, they were checking around, and they found that the 12-volt 2x6 cable had melted from the PSU side. And then adding to this, a former Gigabyte and Intel engineer had posted a pretty lengthy post on the /r PC Master Race subreddit explaining that what they most likely think is the cause. I'll have a link to it below, but one of the key takeaways here is that the RTX 40 series and the 50 series had no shunt resistor to monitor the current for each pair of 12-volt pins. Nvidia has combined 6 12-volt pins into a single block, meaning no current balancing can be done between the pins, and they mentioned how the connector itself really isn't the problem, but it's the way Nvidia is pushing it so hard. They're saying that it's ideally okay for 375 watts tops, which is, what the 4090 and the 5090, they blow past that. And the 5080, especially the custom models, are basically right at that mark. They straight up state that any card using the connector with a power draw higher than 375 watts should just be avoided. Another video I did want to highlight was a video from Jay's 2 cents, and this was a pretty eye-opening discovery by Jay because he also shows that how different cables from different manufacturers have inconsistent pin depth. So Corsair was one of the worst offenders from them all. He was showing how the connector, or he was showing it under a microscope, and you can see how in some of the angles it looks like a few of the pins are just straight up missing, but they're not. It's just because they're recessed so much more compared to the others. And, even though the connector itself may be fully seated, it's causing inconsistent current between the two pins because of the lack of contact. He also shows a fast gear cable in that video, which showed pretty good consistency, way better than the Corsair one. And that's shameful because, Corsair, look how big they are. And for what it's worth, I've been using a fast gear adapter for my own 4090 for over 2 years now, and knock on wood, it's been pretty solid. At the end of the day, this connector is just horrible, and it's one thing to implement it on one generation and have problems, chalk that up to a mistake, but for them to be doing it again and then also not take any precautions or implement better safety guards is just carelessness on a whole nother level. At this stage though, I doubt Nvidia is really going to take any action on this because they had over 2 years to do something about it and they didn't do anything. But that's going to be doing it for this one. I have a whole bunch of benchmarking videos that, I have down in the pipeline, so it's been pretty busy over here. But, that's going to be doing it for now, and I'm going to be touching base with you guys in the next one.
If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.